When you think of kids movies, you typically don't associate them with the horror genre. Whether it's a movie with a lot of extreme gore or just a movie with a lot of disturbing imagery, it makes sense that most horror movies aren't meant to be watched by young and impressionable children. However, even in spite of the inherent contrast between something being scary and something being made for kids, there have been a few examples of some kids movies that are also genuinely terrifying, whether intentional or not. So today I want to talk about some of the creepiest movies that were made for kids to examine what makes these movies so scary and to see why these movies left such an impression on so many young people around the world. Now the first movie that comes to mind when I think of a scary kids movie would definitely have to be Monster House, a movie about a kid who spies on his creepy neighbor who just so happens to live in a demonic house that likes to eat people. So now this kid and his two friends have to take down this house before Halloween comes to make sure that the house doesn't start eating all of the neighborhood children while they're out trick-or-treating.
Do you realize what's gonna happen tonight?
Hundreds of kids walking right up to that house.
Within this simple premise, the movie manages to capture a lot of really terrifying elements that make it a lot scarier than what you'd expect for a movie aimed at kids. For starters, the opening scene sets the tone for the rest of the movie by cluing us as an audience into the creepiness of this house and its singular resident, Mr. Nebbercracker, by showing him yelling at a little girl, "Do you want to be eaten alive?" and then stealing her tricycle. The movie then shows our main character's parents going out of town to establish a theme within this movie regarding how almost all of the adults in this film are either completely oblivious or unwilling to help our child protagonist as they try to stop this house from eating people.
Believe it or not, we got things to do. We do.
In fact, this disconnect between the children and the adults is a theme that is shared across quite a lot of these scary kids movies. But while the adults' incompetence is often either played for laughs or utilized just to move the plot along, for Monster House, it serves as a great way to ramp up the tension for the movie by forcing the child protagonist to try to figure out how to beat this evil house on their own without the help of the people who are meant to be protecting these kids from danger.
So much for relying on the government.
Yeah, I know, I hate the government, dude, we're screwed.
The only adult who actually helps these kids defeat this house is Mr. Nebbercracker, who just like our main protagonist, has been misunderstood by those around him and thus has been forced to protect his neighbors from this evil house all by himself. Because the thing about Nebbercracker is that he only acts so evil to his neighbors in order to prevent them from being harmed by his wife, who was accidentally killed during the building of this house by a bunch of teenagers and decided to come back and possess the house to harm anyone who gets near it. To add on to this already disturbing and pretty sad backstory, the movie also shows his dead wife's body as it's buried in cement, which is honestly a pretty terrifying scene, along with the numerous suspenseful sequences involving the house itself and the completely bizarre character designs of some of these characters, and it's not hard to see why this movie was so scary to so many people. Another family movie that always freaked me out would be the 1995 version of Jumanji starring Robin Williams. The main plot of this movie is that two kids move into an abandoned house and stumble upon a mysterious jungle-themed board game called Jumanji.
Let's bring it over here.
When they play the game, they realize that whatever cryptic jungle-themed message the game produces will then come to life in the real world, and the only way to revert all of this is by finishing the game. And the last time anyone ever played this game was 26 years ago, and that ended with a kid named Alan getting sucked into the game, with him returning to the real world as Robin Williams after these two kids start playing the game again. But the problem is that each of the things that this board game unleashes to the real world basically wants to kill everything in sight. And some of these creations are actually pretty terrifying, like this weird plant thing that starts trying to eat one of the kids, or these giant spiders that start attacking Robin Williams while he's stuck in the floor and can't move. One of the kids even turns into a werewolf after trying to cheat in the game.
You tried to cheat?
No, I tried to drop the dice so they land on 12.
Oh, okay, honey. Well, that would be cheating.
And it seems like my fears of this movie when I was younger were more than justified, because even Roger Ebert in his review for the movie seemed to criticize this movie's PG rating and insisted that it was way too scary for children.
I'll tell you, I think this movie would frighten younger kids, terrify them.
However, looking back on it, this movie is kind of ridiculous. Sorry for nitpicking here, but how do these monkeys know how to drive a car? And a motorcycle? And yet this one can't even open a fridge from the inside? Nonetheless, I can't deny that this is a pretty fun movie, and the onslaught of various intense set pieces make for a pretty scary time considering this was aimed at kids. But unlike these other kids movies where the scariness is intentional, the live-action Cat in the Hat movie has to be one of the most bizarre and unintentionally terrifying kids movies I have ever seen. And whereas the other movies that I talk about in this video are generally pretty good, this is one of the hardest movies that I've ever had to sit through.
I knew that milk would come back to haunt me.
Because as soon as the titular Cat in the Hat shows up, what started as a relatively normal, albeit somewhat annoying kids movie quickly devolves into one of the most obnoxious and fever-dreamish movies I've ever seen. Most of the movie feels like an onslaught of random insane shenanigans involving the Cat in the Hat and these two kids, all held together by an extremely thin plot, which is probably due to the fact that they made an entire feature-length movie out of a 61-page picture book made for kids. And because of the movie's constant barrage of bizarre comedy gags and its surreal dreamlike landscape, the movie has a very off-putting vibe to it. Not to mention the surprisingly unsettling character design. Because unlike in the original Cat in the Hat book where the titular cat actually looks like a cat, the fact that this movie's Cat in the Hat just looks like Mike Myers in a full-size cat costume makes the design feel very uncanny. And don't even get me started on Thing 1 and Thing 2. What am I even watching? So even if this movie didn't intend to be considered scary, I still thought it was worth mentioning purely because of how weird and often unsettling the movie can be. But when it comes to kids movies that could genuinely be considered a horror movie, there are not many films that fit that description quite as well as the 2009 film Coraline. Based on a 2002 book of the same name, the film follows a young girl named Coraline who lives in a dull house with her two parents who don't pay very much attention to her.
I almost fell down a well yesterday, Mom.
Uh-huh.
I would have died.
That's nice.
She continues to be bored with her current life until one night when she goes through a secret door and discovers a seemingly idyllic alternate version of her current life, before realizing that maybe this idyllic version of reality isn't as good as it seems. What makes Coraline so scary is how it consistently maintains a creepy atmosphere through its unsettling visuals and world building. From the beginning of the movie, we're introduced to a pair of thin, metallic hands taking apart an existing doll, removing its insides, and replacing it with a doll that resembles Coraline. While at first the audience isn't aware of the significance of this just yet, the extreme close-ups of this process, along with the fact that this process is being done by something that isn't human, immediately sets off an uneasy feeling. And the movie continues its creepiness by introducing us to these very eccentric characters that also have some pretty, unique character design. But another aspect of this movie that makes it so creepy is that Coraline is never in an environment that she is truly familiar with. The movie establishes early on that Coraline's family has just moved into a new house, taking Coraline away from her friends and forcing her into an unfamiliar setting.
Don't forget about me, guys. Okay?
So whether she's in the other world or the real world, Coraline is always venturing into a place that is essentially unknown to her, allowing the audience to feel just as confused and perplexed by Coraline's surroundings as she is, while also playing into the movie's themes about the effects of isolation. But it's the uncanniness of the other world and the eventual reveal of the other mother's true form that are probably the most memorable parts of the movie, and rightfully so, because even from the beginning, the other world is undeniably off-putting, and the other mother's eventual transformation near the end of the film is really creepy. But even setting those aspects aside, the world of this movie as a whole feels so unique and well realized that there really are no other movies that you can compare to it. And this is all due to the movie's incredible animation and its willingness to get pretty weird and creepy with its imagery. Whether it's this giant cheese guy and his dancing mice, or this over-the-top theater performance by Coraline's other neighbors, or the idea of getting your eyes taken out and replaced by buttons,
So sharp you won't feel a thing. Ow!
or this creepy spider lady that wants to feed on your soul, the movie gives its audience plenty of visuals to have nightmares over. And it's for these reasons that Coraline has earned its reputation as one of the scariest kids movies ever made. But another stop-motion film that is surprisingly scary given that it's for kids would be the 2012 film Paranorman. A movie about a kid named Norman who can see ghosts, but specifically ghosts that have some unfinished business that they need to take care of.
My ghost isn't going anywhere until I pass on my duty to another.
And when the anniversary of a supposed witch causes a bunch of zombies to spawn out of the ground, it's up to Norman to stop these zombies from causing chaos to the whole town, all the while having to deal with bullying and ridicule from a lot of his school classmates and even his father, since no one else in the town can see ghosts except for him.
How many times do we have to go through this, son? Your grandmother is dead!
This movie's scariness mostly comes down to the unsettling imagery and some surprisingly dark subject matter. I mean, the movie's main antagonist is a child named Aggie who was murdered for being wrongfully accused of witchcraft, and is now enacting revenge on the people who wronged her. Similar to Monster House and Coraline, Paranorman again sees a child protagonist navigating through life amidst a bunch of very ignorant adults, with this movie specifically focusing on the dangers of mob mentality and how it can cause issues to be blown way out of proportion for no particular reason. One of the main revelations of this movie is that the zombies aren't actually there to eat any of the humans, and that the zombies just want to be free from the guilt of wrongfully killing Aggie back in the 1700s. And yet despite their lack of an appetite for humans, the citizens of this town still end up wreaking havoc throughout the whole town and want all of the zombies to be killed.
Kill him in the head!
Now, although this revelation kind of deflates a lot of the tension from the movie by removing the threat of one of the core antagonists of the movie, it's nice that the film teaches some important values and displays a level of maturity that you don't often see in a lot of kids movies.
What about the people who hurt you? Don't you ever want to make them suffer? Well, yeah, but what good would that do?
And in terms of scariness, the movie does actually have some pretty creepy imagery, and there are a lot of suspenseful sequences. While it never scared me as much as Coraline did when I was younger, I do distinctly remember the scene where Aggie gets sentenced to death while on trial. Because up until this point, the movie didn't actually reveal that the person who supposedly did the witchcraft was just a little girl.
I was only playing.
I, with fire, you were speaking with the dead.
Even though they don't actually show her dying, because of course, I still remember being pretty surprised at how this movie would include something like that. And it's also got some pretty cool animation, and a surprisingly stacked voice cast.
Do you use free weights? Because your deltoids are huge.
I've never used deltoids in my life. I swear, you can test me.
When it comes to kids movies, I've noticed that some of the most memorable ones out there are the ones that push the boundaries of what a kids movie can really be. And for that reason, I think some of the most memorable kids movies are also the ones that are some of the scariest. Whether you think the Cat in the Hat movie is an absurdist masterpiece or an obnoxious mess, one thing I can definitely say about it is that it's at the very least a memorable experience. And I think scary movies are a great way to get a message across because being scared makes you a lot more likely to pay attention to something. Like with Coraline, the film uses its creepiness to not only spook its audience, but to also teach them a valuable lesson about appreciating what you have. And because of how utterly terrifying the alternative to appreciating what you have is, the movie's message is pretty effective. So yeah, I think there should be some more scary kids movies out there. And if you like this video, consider liking and subscribing. It really helps me out. And let me know what movie scared you when you were younger. And also, let me know if I should make a part 2 to this video, because I'm sure there are plenty of other creepy kids movies out there for me to talk about. Thanks for watching.